Trade deadline frenzy, DNVR Avalanche style, sipping on a Breck Brew right now. Talking about the guy I'm pretty hype on for the forwards, potentially available for the Avalanche. Not Claude Giroux level, let's be honest. But Jonathan Drouin from the Montreal Canadiens. I'm probably not right to call him the prodigal son on his return to Nathan MacKinnon, but somewhere in that ballpark, maybe. 20 points in 32 games this year. One huge caveat as of the recording of this video. Jonathan Drouin has not played a game in over a month due to injury. So,
again,
there's a factor there.
Always hurt.
Yeah.
Always got something going on. I think I think last year it was the mental health stuff.
Yep.
And that's not like that's
no
not
hate.
me,
Not,
like
not
no
that you're
hate.
putting him down,
not
but
coming
it is
down
a
on
thing.
a guy, but
like,
you have the question of availability. Even when he's physically healthy, mentally he was struggling. Okay, well, he took the time off. He did what he had to do. Then he comes back in, and then physically he's not healthy anymore. Mm-hmm. And if you look at his last couple of years now, even in COVID-shortened seasons, he's not playing very many games.
Yep. There's definitely a lack there.
The availability is a huge problem for me for a guy that still has another year on a deal. At a real number.
It's a fair argument, and not one that I'm going to try to make a counter argument to, because that's just part of the package. If you're going out and getting Jonathan Drouin, you have to accept that.
Look, if it's Jonathan Drouin at $3.5 million instead of $5.5 million,
you're all in for it.
A lot more open to the conversation of you're a lot more willing to live with the pockmarks there, the red flags, that the availability may not be there, but you've spent less money on it, so you're not as reliant on it.
What I will say is Jonathan Drouin today is the best fit it's ever been for Colorado to go out and get him.
Easily true. Easily all the years that people have been trying to shoehorn Jonathan Drouin into an Avs sweater. I would say the only other time that it made any sense was when he was requesting the trade out of Tampa Bay.
Yep.
And it was like, well, maybe, right? And we were in the locker room talking to Nathan MacKinnon about it, and he's like, well, I've been texting him, and we're still boys, and
well, it literally, all of this goes back to the rumors that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And everything from that moment to now, so much of it stems back to the chemistry that him and Nathan MacKinnon had when playing Major Junior, right? There was even people at that draft.
It's hard to find two guys on a team that put up 120 points together.
Right.
Even in juniors.
Yeah. And there was people immediately after that draft that were finding all kinds of ways to talk them, either themselves or attempting to talk other people into, it was Jonathan Drouin who drove a lot of that, and he kind of propped up Nathan MacKinnon.
When you looked at the individual production, how each of those guys did, because there were injuries for both MacKinnon and Drouin in juniors, and when you looked at their production, Drouin's production was better without MacKinnon than with.
And he had a fantastic playmaking ability at that level. There's a ton. I mean, go YouTube MacKinnon Drouin. Nathan MacKinnon scores a lot of easy goals off looks from Jonathan Drouin. They were electric to watch.
There's a reason Nathan MacKinnon had to overhaul his shot once he got to the NHL.
Right.
Because him scoring tap-ins and backdoors was not the life he was living anymore.
Right. And
I think that's a bit of the selling point for Drouin is realistically probably not going to be playing next to Nathan MacKinnon.
Well, so that's where I was going with this. What's so funny about it is, when he requested the trade out of Tampa, and even those couple of years after when it wasn't still really working out.
He never turned into a star. Well, he was a consistent 50-point
First of all, Montreal was like, what if we play him at center?
Yeah.
And that didn't
miscast him because part of the problem that you see with every guy that Montreal has ruined over the last few years is that they tried to dick around with them at center because they couldn't get any centers.
Well, and so it was always, the Avs are needing to turn around. Nathan MacKinnon needs line mates, reunite him with the man that it was, just magic. But now when you're talking about maybe the most realistic point in which, I still don't know what the actual interest level would be in bringing this guy back, knowing he's got another year, knowing he's got the injury problems. But let's throw that aside and say this is maybe the most realistic opportunity for the Avs to bring in Jonathan Drouin, and he will likely be nowhere near Nathan MacKinnon on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, maybe...
Save for them getting caught out at the tail beginning and end of a shift.
Maybe a power play. Like,
but even still, like, you're really happy with Kadri on that top line of the bumpers, because my first thought was
I'm saying
maybe you put him in that bumper spot, but even that I just don't know.
He's more playmaker than shooter,
for sure,
right?
And with Kadri, with Kadri around, you are definitely like his fit is.
Give pucks to Kadri. Gives pucks to Berkey.
Right.
Done.
He feeds those guys and brings the additional value of pushing Nichushkin down next to Newhook.
Yep.
Where you make two lines better. The idea is that maybe your second line doesn't get better, but it stays the same, and your third line gets that much better.
And you also have the option that if that's not clicking, you just put Nuke right back there, and now we're back to this conversation again of Jonathan Drouin strapped to Alex Newhook, and that's good for everybody.
The other consideration here is that Jonathan Drouin, as an even strength player in the NHL, hasn't been very good in his career. He's been a big time
defense is a
feaster
liability for
of power play points, and his defense has always been a liability, even as a wing.
Yep.
And so when you talk about if you're going to replace Nichushkin with Drouin, you're getting it's a very large drop off in ability
giving up a lot
on
of
that. And how much more offensively are you getting?
But I think part of the conversation there is you can be flexible. You can throw Nichushkin out on the second line when you want a more defensive look. You can drop Drew into the third line when you want to run that.
But if you're talking, and this is going to be, he would likely be an expensive acquisition, and having to kind of baby him and protect him in that way is problematic.
Sure.
When you talk about some of the other forwards, it's the same conversation with Phil Kessel. You need to put him in certain situations because you have to protect him. You need to put, when we were talking about Paul Stastny's not in that conversation. You aren't worrying about protecting him. You're just worrying about how good he actually is nowadays, But the difference is that you don't have a coaching staff that has to actively make an attempt to try and shield a player from certain situations because they could sink you in them because they've been that bad in them in their career.
When you had this name on your list, whatever that was 2 weeks ago, whenever we did our initial wish list, it was a name that really jumped out to me because it hadn't crossed my mind, and I think it's such an interesting player, and he's got so much just raw skill that how are you not at the very least intrigued by the idea?
It's so easy to fall in love with the sex appeal of what if he gets here and blows up?
Right.
You look at the highlights and you go, ooh, that's fun.
Right. But for me, again, we did the Phil Kessel video. If you skipped over that one, go back and rewatch it. Just because for a lot of the reasons that we outlined in terms of acquisition cost, et cetera, to me, this is just a much more expensive version of kind of what you're looking for out of Phil Kessel with with an elevated ceiling. Woo, bless you.
Sorry, everybody.
Genuinely scared me.
Yeah, I was going to say. So while I love the idea of Jonathan Drouin being here, I just don't know if what he brings in his game as a whole is worth what it would cost to probably get him here.
And that's where the cost, if the cost is low enough where Colorado's comfortable, it's probably not high enough for Montreal to feel motivated.
Right.
Let him.
Here's the thing. My one argument there is Montreal is absolutely, at least should be, in fire sale mode.
Yeah, but Drouin is a guy that can help bridge you to different eras.
And he's still young enough.
Suzuki Caulfield era.
Is one more year really that important for Montreal right now?
It could be more than just the 1 year if things continue.
And if it is, that's a different conversation, for sure.
Because you do turn over the roster. You do turn over the organization to younger guys. You start to move on. You start to get fresh blood in there, and you know, if he can stay healthy, the idea of him feeding pucks to Suzuki and Caulfield or Josh Anderson, there's a lot of interest there too.
And again, he started his career a little bit of yo-yoing with the Syracuse Crunch of the American Hockey League. So
and he wasn't allowed in the AHL, remember, because of the CHL NHL agreement. So he had to go back to the Q and just put up 140 points there because he wasn't allowed to be anywhere else.
And so it feels like he's much older than he is in the same kind of way that it does for Nathan MacKinnon because he's been around for so long now. But like Jonathan Drouin is still, I mean, he's in his mid-20s.
Yep. Prime.
And so, you know, Montreal, while they are in fire sale mode, I just don't know if this is going to be one of those guys that they're going to be super motivated to take a little bit lesser on just because they're loading up.
It's easier for me to say it's a summer deal, but for a team acquiring him, they get 2 playoff runs out of him. So
yeah,
that's the motivation to pony up the price right now. And that's where I think Colorado's disconnect is going to come in, is that the price to get him, just given the red flags and given that he's way more of a luxury, it doesn't really fit. He doesn't fit the thing that they could really use, which is a two-way.
Well, I think the way that to put that is the price for him is better spent on something else.
Yeah. One of these other guys we're going
likely,
to get to in a second.
But I love him as a player. I love the idea of him as a player.
Yep, I agree. I think he'd be a great fit stylistically, but how realistic is the trade? I don't know. If there's more interest, great. Either way, Jonathan Drouin is going to wrap up his video. We're really starting to push into the I don't know how to put it. The guys that could really make the Avalanche significantly better.
Guys we're going to feel a lot more strongly about.
For sure. So be sure to keep it tuned in to the trade deadline frenzy stuff from the DNVR Avalanche. We will be back with our next video. I don't know if it's a forward or defenseman at this point. We're so deep into this list. We'll see. Come watch the next video. Just let autoplay go on YouTube. Bye.